Welcome to the Fright Lab. I'm Lucas Yoakum. With us tonight, as always, is my co-host and producer, Joseph Wren. Tonight, we are taking a step away from our regular format, so we appreciate your indulgence on this, regarding this recording. Today, January 16th of 2025, the film-loving world learned of the death of David Lynch at 78 years old. Lynch might not have been expressly considered a horror filmmaker, but many of his most iconic pictures definitely strayed into this territory. Movies like Eraserhead, Lost Highway, and Mulholland Drive, and Inland Empire, they all had moments, if not entire runtimes, of deeply unsettling imagery. But outside of the visuals of his work, Lynch was an absolute master of atmosphere. He could take absolutely mundane visuals, like walking down a hall or the side of a building lit up at night, and craft it into something scary beyond comparison. What you didn't see was unnerving, and what you did see was just plain scary. It's easy to categorize David Lynch as an auteur. He was considered by many to be like a surrealist filmmaker, and that's absolutely a fair description. His work always felt dreamlike or just simply nightmarish. The world of his films was always a little topsy-turvy, a loony sane set of binoculars engaging in voyeurism on our collective subconscious. Nothing feels like a David Lynch flick other than a David Lynch flick. Attempts at parody or even loving homage might come close, but they always miss the mark. It's difficult to say what the secret sauce was. Maybe it was all the coffee he drank, or maybe it was the transcendental meditation. At any rate, Lynch was always after the big fish in terms of concept or execution. So then what is there to say about his career? David Lynch was multifaceted, a polymorphous creator. He got his start in the art world as a painter and kept painting throughout his whole life. His photography, what little of it that seems to have been published, it's beautifully stark and it's creepy. But outside of the big screen is the best place to see his genius or his madness, whichever way you want to see it. He might be best known for the TV series Twin Peaks, which first hit the airwaves in 1990. The show was initially canceled in 1991, but saw a revival in 2017. And in that 26-year span, as well as now, well past 2017, the show has never lost any of its fan base or just its sheer fascination. Twin Peaks is a show like no other and helped expose the mainstream audiences of the world to phantasmagoric surrealism for nearly 30 years. Okay, but what about his music? It's astonishing to me how few people know of David Lynch's musical career. Sure, he'll forever be associated with the composer and musician Angelo Badalamenti, and with good reason. The scores they created together are absolute masterpieces, and they deserve your attention. But his solo career, for lack of a better term, is as dizzying and unusual as his visual work. Albums like Crazy Clown Time and The Big Dream were, well, rock and roll of a sort. He helped also to create the music for his film Eraserhead and recorded an ambient album called Polish Night Music with Marek Zabrowski. If you've never heard it, go listen to it. It's cool. One of his last albums, Thought Gang, was also recorded with Angelo Badalamenti, and I'm kind of at a loss for words to describe it, maybe. I think it's best called something to the effect of, like, I don't know, Lynchian jazz? Perhaps the best measure of a creator is the impact that they have on the lives and careers of others. For instance, David Lynch was massively important to the careers of Kyle MacLachlan and Laura Dern. He helped reintroduce Dennis Hopper to the movie-going world. And musically, both in his films and in his solo career, he worked with singers like Julie Cruz and Krista Bell, which helped them gain big audiences in an era when vocalists such as those two might be completely overlooked. There's another argument that could maybe be made about his career, and it's been obliquely referenced here already. And that is the word Lynchian. The term is shorthand to describe things that follow so-called quote-unquote like dream logic or juxtapose images of Americana with depravity and filth. Lynchian is an amazing way to describe a definite trend in art and will likely carry on into the future as the preferred descriptor for creative endeavors which horrify and confuse their audiences. The Lynchian world, if it can be called that, has always existed, and it always will. It's just that now it has a title. So, in the end, what can we learn from the career of David Lynch? More than anything, I think Lynch's real value is in ethos. You can create incredibly bizarre art and offer no explanations to it at all. And if you are sincere in this creativity, if you are utterly dedicated to its pursuit, your work can find an audience. Lynch's unabashed weirdness might be off-putting for some, and I understand why, but it is an absolute gift for those who can appreciate it. Now, I know that it's somewhat in bad form to talk about anyone but the dearly departed in a eulogy, especially if it's going to be self-referential. But I do have to say that David Lynch's career and art has had a massive impact on me personally, as well as my own creative life. The Fright Lab might not exist without him. That lesson of being dedicated to one's creative vision is highly resonant to both Joe and I, and it's one of the reasons he and I became friends to begin with. We might not be an expressly like Lynchian show, if such a thing exists, but we do deeply appreciate those Lynchian elements in the world. You know, it's tempting to fall into sadness when someone you respect passes away, but this isn't the time for despair or overwhelming loss. Now is the time for you to be honest with yourself and chase down that ultimate big fish, your deepest self and your greatest satisfaction. As Twin Peaks Log Lady was quick to remind us, death is just a change, not an end. David Lynch is still with us through his works and through the works of those that learned from him. So, in a way, David Lynch isn't really dead. He's immortal. Joe, I know how big of a fan you are with David Lynch. Do you want to say anything? The floor is yours.
I want everyone that listens to this show to spend some time thinking about how David Lynch came into your life. What film was it? Was it Twin Peaks? Everyone has a different beginning with David Lynch, but we all find our way to the surreal, the horrifying, and the scary without being vulgar that he does. I don't know when I discovered David Lynch was more than Eraserhead, Twin Peaks, and Lost Highway. The Elephant Man and Dune are some of the oldest films in my memory, and those do not follow the Lynchian norm that we all think of with this man. He was a talent for putting an idea on screen and following it. And we've held back David Lynch from this podcast. I think we've been waiting for a special occasion to talk about Twin Peaks or Lost Highway, Mulholland Drive, Inland Empire. We've been holding these back. I think it's time we celebrate David Lynch and how he impacted all our lives. So pardon me for planning ahead, but I think we need to have some David Lynch on the podcast very soon. I know I'm going to have a good time revisiting those films. I would have a great time if it wasn't for this reason. But today is a day to celebrate, and that's what I want everyone to do.
Yeah. In light of today's really just fucking upsetting news, I've actually wanted to do some David Lynch stuff for a while, like you said. And, like you said, like, when do you dig into someone that deep? When someone has a catalog that intense, where do you even go? And the idea I've had, typically fans of the show will already know that I don't like talking about the next episode in the episode I'm talking about. But the next episode is going to be dedicated to David Lynch. And what I want to do, instead of immediately going into, I don't know, Eraserhead, Blue Velvet, something like that, instead, I want to focus in on the lesser discussed parts of David Lynch's career. Like, I've already brought up his music, and I do want to dig into it a little in depth at some point. But the next episode is going to be more on David Lynch's less discussed elements, some of his short form stuff, some of his just lesser known material, because there's a lot of it. And even doing a 4,000 word script on it, I can tell you that when it's done, I'm still only going to have scratched the surface, and that's kind of the animal we're dealing with here, is that Lynch's work is so deep and so heavy in terms of just the amount of stuff he put out and the ideas he was swimming in, for lack of a better term. It's a subject we could talk about for a while, but I want to start there, and that'll be our next episode. This is a real bummer of a first episode of the year. You might notice there's been a little bit of an audio quality difference, primarily because this news came out today, and Joe and I immediately said, yeah, we got to get this done now. So I'm recording from what little home recording equipment I have. Joe's in his studio, obviously. That won't be the case next time. But in the interim, let's go ahead and wrap it here, I guess. The Fright Lab is written by me, Lucas Yoakum. It's co-hosted and produced by Joseph Wren. Normally, we have a whole ending shtick we do here, but I'm just going to go ahead and leave it with this. Go support indie media and struggling artists. Go have an extra cup of coffee. And, man, just go watch a Lynch flick. It'll help you feel better. We appreciate each and every one of you, and we will talk to you all again very soon.